Welcome back to another video with Tabletop Live. Today I'm going to be doing the Chapter Proof 2022 missions review. Disclaimer, I've not played any of these missions yet, so this is my thoughts on the new secondaries and new missions and what they look like on paper and how I think I'm going to play them and how I think the missions are going to be played in general. So we'll go over the secondary choices, just minor changes, not a lot, just a couple to discuss, and then we'll go through each of the missions, look at the layouts, look at how they play, look at the mission specific. Primary / secondary, how you add your primary. Each mission has like a new primary part that adds to your total primary score. It's still capped at 45. And we'll go through all of them and see what it looks like. On initial thoughts, it looks like the central objective is incredibly important and you're going to need a way to keep trading on the middle objective. But let's jump into it and see what it's like. Alright, so before we jump into the new missions, I want to go over the new secondaries. Most of them aren't changed. There's a couple of nice changes here, especially with like bring it down, being able to like raiders and rhinos giving out 2 points. So any vehicle between 10 and 14 wounds now gives up 2 wounds. And now 15 or more gives up 3. So the big monsters give up 3 points. That's a nice change. But one of the really nice changes is, for example, to no prisoners. Now, if you go over 50 points, you get an additional point. And if you go over 100 kill points, you get 2 additional kill points for your secondary. Which is really nice, especially those lists that give up like 12 or 13 points because they've got like 120 wounds. Giving up those extra 2 points means you can score like 13 or 14 on that secondary, which is really, really nice. I think that's a nice little boost to that secondary where before you might be stuck at like 11 points. Most of them are exactly the same. I've got them right here. I'm going through all of them. To the last is the same. All the faction specifics, some are pretty interesting. But I think the most interesting change to secondaries, especially for me because Space Wolves Marine player, the change to investigate signal. So the way it reads is 1 infantry unit, doesn't say it can't be a character, so a character can do it, which is pretty cool, that contains 3 or more models, so not a character. It's another secondary the character can do. But anyways, this one, 3 or more models. If you have a character with 3 models, aka Celestine, she can do it. That's cool. If you're wholly within 6 of the center, you can start doing this action. It's complete at the end of your turn, and if there's no enemy units within 6, you complete it, and it's 3 points per turn. Now, for me, it's great because Oath, I want to be in the middle. I'm going to have units in the middle. I'm going to be scoring it. That's great. But one thing that I'll point out now that we'll see once we're going through all the missions is on 7 out of the 9 missions, there's an objective in the center. And that objective is pretty vital for most of the missions in terms of denying your opponent 15 primary. If you can't take the middle objective, you're going to give your opponent 15 primary. So the fact that you have to take that objective, clear whatever's on that objective, means you're already going to be there, you're already going to be on that objective, you're already going to remove the opponent from that center. So it's a very nice synergy with how I'm expecting the missions to play out, with the ability of clearing whatever's in the middle and the fact that you can now do an action there as you're doing it. Now, you have to dedicate an extra unit to do the action and not just go kill the opponent. I think it's a great secondary that I'm going to start doing over Rod or Retrieve Nachmon data. Deploy to teleport homers is also a very, very interesting one, especially for like late game because you can score up to 4 points per turn. It's infantry or biker. My units are too expensive to have. That's my dog doing weird things. Cora, what you doing? That weirdo. Anyways, teleport homers is a good secondary as well. Let me know in the comments what you think about the secondaries, how they affect your list and list building. I've definitely now built a list to do investigate signal over Rod. I've dropped the scouts. There'll be a video on my new list and how it's adapting to the meta. But in terms of the new secondaries, it's also very, very interesting. I like the changes. I don't know how the faction specifics will play out. If these apply to you, just let us know in the comments because I've gone through them. Some of them look very good. The Imperial Guard one, like on paper, looks great. Like it's 1 kill per point, up to 3 points per turn. The problem is, first, your opponent has to have 15 units for you to kill. And then you have to space those out at 3 kills per turn. So it might mess with what you're trying to accomplish in the game. You might want to kill more than 3, or your opponent might not have 15. But like if you get like 11 or 12 points on that secondary, it's a great secondary to take for Imperial Guard. And the other faction-specific secondaries, just let us know what you think. If you're going to build a list to auto-complete the secondaries, or if you're just going to stick to the regular secondaries and wait for a codex. But yeah, those are the secondaries. So let's jump into the missions. All right. So for the older missions, they have now two parts to the way you can score primary. You have the classic way of holding objectives, which has now been reduced to 4 points per objective on a hold 1, hold 2, and then 4 points for holding 2 and 3, and then more for domination missions. In dominations, I think there's only one domination, if I remember correctly. We'll go through all of them. But the interesting thing is your primary is still kept at 45. With those 4 points, I think it's like 48 points or 46 points that you can score max. So it's 12 per round, so 48 points of holding objectives. So that's already past the cap. You can now supplement that with the mission-specific primary objective, which gives you, most of them, gives you the option to score like another 30-ish points. So it's very, very interesting, the fact that you don't have to score max primary and the max mission primary to max your primary score and get to the 45 points. There's a very nice duality where you can score, you can be less aggressive on objectives as long as you're supplementing yourself with the mission specific mission. So for mission 11, the first mission, the mission rule is if you control an objective outside of your deployment zone, you get a command point at the start of your command phase. And if you control your deployment objective in their deployment zone, you get 2 CP. So the interesting thing is to score a CP on your first command phase, like when the game starts, you need to be holding one of these objectives. That requires either forward deploy or a pregame move, which already impacts your list building if you want to have that CP. It also gives you the option to deny your opponent's CP. So if you charge your opponent's objectives and you kill both whatever units they have on both those objectives, 1, they get no CP, and 2, you put them on 5 primary. So playing aggressively on this take and hold mission can actually net a lot of benefits between denying CP and denying primary points. So that's kind of interesting. Now those objectives are pretty far from your deployment zone, so you have to be like awfully aggressive. But like orcs and Tyranid Horde, they're gonna be putting models on your objectives. So you have to either be able to protect those objectives by screening or characters or having really fighty units or very tanky units. So for example, I'm gonna have a Wolfen squad on there, and if you come and kill me off that objective, they'll fight on death, and now you're trading those units without me having to kill them in my phase. But that is gonna mess with people's primary, so it's super, super interesting. And then the progressive objective, break them body and soul. It's 1 point per unit destroyed at the end of the battle round. That includes in your turn and your opponent's turn if you're at the bottom. So going second means you can kill in your turn, and if your opponent charges in through an interrupt or fight on death, you can get extra points like that. But it's capped at 3, I believe. This hurts MSU style, so like if I've got my Cyber Wolves, if you have a bunch of like single unit models that you're using to hold objectives, it's a little punishing to the MSU playstyle. This does favor like tankier, bigger units like Terminators and that kind of stuff, to deny your opponent the ability to score those points. Now, as I mentioned before, you don't need to be scoring this point to max out your primary. As long as you're holding, as long as you get, what it would be for 45 points, I guess you have to hold more twice and then hold 2 every other turn. So it is pretty complicated, but as long as you're getting like 1 or 2 kills a turn, you're gonna get like 10 points on this. So don't worry too much about, well, I'm saying this without having played the mission. Don't worry too much about giving up this point, because it only counts towards primary, and the primary is going to be capped at 45 regardless. You keep getting caught. You're loud. Weird. Anyways, so that's the first mission. Artillery, super useful to be clearing those objectives and keep them in your backfield and pummel those units that are holding objectives, and the ones that you anticipate they're going to come towards you. Yay, Hive Guard. I hate Hive Guard. Alright, mission 12, tear down their icons. So this is a take and hold. The mission rules is prime explosives. 1 of your units, this is the one where the characters can do it. 1 unit, no restrictions. Wholly within your enemy's territory, which is table halves the long way. Yeah, it's table halves the long way. So if you're wholly within it, you can prime an objective, which is you have to be 9 inches away from other primed objectives. If you have obstacle, it's complete in your turn. If not, it's complete in your next command phase. That requires you to survive there. So this is where your obstacle units, your troops, are very, very powerful and very useful to complete these actions before your opponent can kill you and deny you those points. And to defuse it, you have to be within range of the objective mark. It doesn't specify what range. It's probably 3 inches, just like controlling an objective. If there's no enemy units within range of it, and you can defuse at the end of your turn on a 4+. 3+, you get +3 to that roll, so automatically successful. Or maybe it fails on a 1. It fails on a 1 if you're OPSEC. So very, very interesting. It means that you're dedicating units to do this action. Now, if your plan is to do engage and you're already going to be in that table half, you can already do that action with that unit that's scoring you engage, which is very, very interesting. But aside from that, in terms of the deployment loadout, you have very easy access to one half. It's a lot harder to get to the top half. So like if you can see my cursor up here, it's going to be very hard to get to because that's in your opponent's deployment zone. But at the end of the game, you get 4 points, maximum 15 for each marker that is still active on the table. This allows for a huge point because you can be losing by 10 points, and if you got 3 of these markers, that gives you a 12-point swing that can swing the game late game. And going second means you can go and defuse a bunch of those. So there's a lot of advantages going second there. And you can actually go prime a lot with your OPSEC model. So in this mission, you want your OPSEC units late game if you're going second, because then you can go and prime a bunch of these objectives once you've dealt with your opponent, and you can get a huge point increase. Any you can do it, transport, salvage, random units, characters. If there's good terrain, you can get into good position. Again, 4 deploy is going to be very useful in this mission. Once per turn, so you can plant maximum of 5 bombs planted. 4 if you don't use any OPSECs because you have to wait a turn for that to be completed. You need 3 to 4 bombs to get tons of points. Because there's easy access to the lower parts of your deployment zone, expect each player to have 1 or 2 of these planted. So you also have to have a contingency plan to go and deny these objectives, to go shut them off. Again, transports, like you can send a Venom or a Cyberwolf to go and defuse one of these. It's on a 4+, but instead of having to go and send one of your troops and OPSEC units. And then for the last mission of the first 3 missions, Data Scry Salvage, this is the all vital intelligence. So data intercept 1 unit, again no restrictions, and the movement phase. You have to be within range of an objective marker that is within your deployment zone. So that is only 1 objective in each deployment zone. So that's where the model has to be doing this action. It's completed at the end of your turn, and then for each, you have to have an OPSEC unit on each objective in no man's land. So you not only get points for the objective in your deployment zone, you have to have an OPSEC model on those objectives to be able to score it. This is cool because you can declare, you can move on, you can score your strangle and so on, and then have OPSEC on there, and you're scoring your data terminals to add towards your primary score. It's a progressive mission, so this is done at the end of each of your turns. And maximum of 3 points. So you can't even go on all 4 and get 4 points. But 3 points is great. If you're controlling 3 of those objectives, your opponent's going to be scoring 5 primary. I believe this is one of the dominations. Yeah, this is one of the domination missions. So if you have 3 of these objectives, your opponent's already going to be on 5 primary maximum, unless you shut them off. So those are the first 3 missions. Mission 21, Abandoned Sanctuaries. This is taking hold, so hold 1, hold 2. Mission rules, no man's land, no forward deploying, and no pregame moves. I put incursions and infiltrators into my list. That's gonna suck. That is very interesting. So, for example, AdMech with their cyber horses, raiders, can't pregame move. G-Circle can't pregame move their pure strains. It's very interesting. Objectives are 14 inches off your deployment zone. Sorry, 12 inches off your deployment zone. So with 3.5 inches, you need 9-inch move units to reach these objectives turn 1. So faster armies are going to be able to hit these objectives. This is a great mission to score Strangle because you can hit 2 of these objectives and shoot one of the other ones. Or you can just go to the 2 objectives your opponent isn't there. For the mission specific, it is end of player turn. You get 2 points if you complete any of the following. So you get 2 points if you control the objective mark in the center, or if you destroy an enemy unit within 6 inches of the center that started there. So the way it works there is I go and I put unit in the middle, I control the objective, I get 2 points. You now kill that unit, and you don't have to go control it, you get 2 points. And then the big part is at the end of the game, you get 5 points for whoever controls the center objective. So for very tanky lists like Dark Angels, this is a great mission because they can hit that objective, put a lot of OPSEC, hold it. It's very hard to take it back, and it's very hard to kill them off. If someone puts 10 Terminators there with -1 damage and they're OPSEC, that's going to be hard to shift. But a very cool mission, forces you to go kill things. Honestly, like, that's going to be that's going to be a bloody mission. Having to kill that objective and then go and take it is going to be pretty brutal. Mission 22, Take and Hold. So this is what it looks like, and then the mission specific is, mission rule, leading from the front. You can only get a CP if your warlord is on the table on a transport. So if you deep strike your warlord or anything like that, you're not getting any CP. Now that's not very common, so I'm not expecting to see that come up a lot. Yeah, because everyone starts the warlord on the table most of the time, or in a transport. The fact that it can be in a transport is great. I don't know how much of an impact it would have had if that didn't count, but anyways. Corrupted Ground, end of player turn. So you get 4 points if you control the enemy deployment zone objective, 2 points if you control one or more objectives in no man's land, and you lose 1 point if you don't control the objective marker in your deployment zone. So it's end of turn, so you shouldn't have trouble scoring the objective in your deployment zone, but the ability to go and smash your opponent's objective, deny them primary, and score 4 points is huge. And you're going to be controlling one of the objectives in no man's land, because you're trying to score primary. If you're not scoring one of those, you're not going to max out your primary. So you're going to score 2 points for holding one of those objectives regardless, right? So that means primary wise, you're going to be scoring 6 points per turn minimum. You're going to get the 4 for holding your home objective, and then 2 points for holding one of the no man's land, and ideally you want to be holding one of those other ones as well in your command phase. So again, it incentivizes you to go and smash your opponent's deployment zone. It's a very aggressive move, especially because that objective is pretty far in. But I mean, if you're doing it, you're already winning. But like, it's end of player turn, so say your opponent makes a mistake, or you got some artillery and a fast moving vehicle, you can kill that objective, go steal it, and that's a huge primary swing and gets you tons of points. So I love this mission. It's very, very cool, and it's my favorite deployment zone, the quarters, because I can deploy my wolfing on the line and scare you. And then the last one for the second set, the scouring. We all know this mission. All the objectives outside of the deployment zone. The mission rule is OSPEC scan, so 1 unit, end of movement. If you're within range of an objective marker that has not been scanned, you can scan it as long as there are no enemy units, and it's completed in your next command phase or end of battle. So it's exactly the same as the old mission. Any unit can do it. I don't remember specifically if there's a restriction to how many of these you can scan. And then end of battle, you get 3 points per objective scanned. So that's cool. You're going to move on to your 2 objectives. You're going to scan them because there's going to be no enemy units on those objectives. So it's pretty much plus 6 points at the end of the game, as long as you scan those 2 and you successfully do it. The middle one's a lot trickier than your opponent's zone. Opponent's objectives are very, very hard to get to. But it's very, very similar to this guy we played. Now the big difference is it's a take and hold, no longer domination. Before on the scouring as a domination, you had to hold 2 of these objectives. Now it's a lot easier to score primary on the scouring. That is a huge change, because all of these objectives being so close together was very easy to just attack one of them and put your opponent on 0 primary. It's how I lost to Custodes in the final round of LVO, because I just couldn't hold objectives against the bikes. The fact that you can now get primary for holding 1 is a big change. Alright, so for the final set, so missions 31 through 33, we have Tide of Conviction. It's a domination, so it's a hold 2. And the mission rule is you get a CP if you control an objective marker in your deployment zone. There's only 1 objective in your deployment zone. It's pretty easy to hold, and now it's very close to the edge of your deployment zone. So aggressive armies that have fast moving units, they might hit this objective. And if you knock that objective out, 1, you're messing with the primary, because you might be able to put them on 0 primary and deny them CP. The ability to deny CP late game is huge, especially think about whenever you need to interrupt or CP reroll in advance, or fight on death, or transhuman, or anything like that. Losing those CP late game can really influence how a game finishes and can create some huge upsets. So that's really, really interesting. And then the progressive and end of game primary, secondary part of the mission called Overrun. So the end of the first 4 player turns, 2 points if you control at least 1 objective marker in your opponent's territory, so that's their table half the short way. And then end of battle, you get 4 points if you control the objective marker in your deployment zone, and 2 for each objective in their territory. So this is incentivizing you to hit their objectives. These are 6 inches off the deployment, the halfway line, so those are 18 inches away from your deployment zone. So if you have forward deploy, you can deploy it onto these objectives. That's going to score you 2 points. But late game, again, OPSEC, like, you need to put as much OPSEC, I think, you need to put as much OPSEC as you can in your lists for late game. So that extra 5 Kabalites, that 10-man gaunt unit that you're holding in the back, the ability to late game, especially if you go second, just line up on those objectives and score your points, or double move if your swarmler is still alive. You can double move those gaunts all the way to your home field objective. Having your crisis suits or your drones holding these objectives will score you tons of points at the end. And going second is a huge advantage, being able to dictate who's going to get how many points. Mission 32, Death and Zeal. So take and hold. Mission rules is objective purged. If you control an objective at the end of your command phase with an OPSEC unit, you control it until your opponent steals it back. So this is like the previous mission set where if you hold an objective before, it didn't have to be OPSEC, you could move off it and it's still yours. Now you have to control with an OPSEC model and then you can move off it. So forward deploying with some like incursors. I don't know who else has forward deploying OPSEC units. Anyways, you put an OPSEC model, you hold it in your command phase, you can move off it, your opponent has to go take it back. So it's kind of cool that it's now OPSEC, it can't be anything random. And then the progressive objective is direct assault. At the end of each player turn, 2 points if, and then 3 points if you do both. So the two conditions are control every objective marker, or one, you did not control the start of your turn. So your opponent has to go and hold one of these objectives out on no man's land to start scoring primary. If you take it back, it gets you 2 points. If you destroy an enemy unit that was controlling an objective, that also counts towards the 2 points. If you do both of those, aka you charge an objective, you kill a unit holding an objective, and you control it, that gets you 3 points. That's going to be extremely common on both sides, going first or second. So controlling every objective is going to be very, very hard to do, but you should be able to control an objective that you did not control at the start of your turn. Like, I mean, you're starting your deployment zone, you move forward, you get 2 points. So that's a very easy one to score, and expect both players to score a lot of points on that progressive secondary. And then the last mission, mission 33, secured missing artifacts. This is another take and hold again. There's very few missions that are dominations, so you're going to be scoring a lot of primary, ideally. Mission rules, precious objectives. After picking deployment zone, attacker moves 1, defender moves 2. So this is like the old priority, so you get to move 1 and defender moves 2, and then you move the last objective. And then you declare a priority objective in your opponent's territory. So the territory is half the table the short way, and you can move, for example, this objective B over here, you can move it towards you as far as you want to try and control that objective as your priority, because you'll get 3 points if you control your priority objective at the end of your turn. So if you, I put here what the fuck, because, ooh, shouldn't be swearing. It's very easy to go and take that objective unless your opponent moves it first and move it into the deployment zone. So now you got the choice between moving. If you get to move first, do you move their objective closer towards you so you can start scoring that priority, or do you take theirs, the one that they want to move, and you move it into your deployment zone? Because I want to score strangle, I'm probably gonna move mine into my deployment zone just so I can start scoring the primary. But with aggressive list, which should be mine, I've got a very aggressive list, you shouldn't have too much issue moving that objective closer towards you and then charging it, killing your opponent, putting them on 5 primary, 4 primary, and scoring your priority target. That's all the missions. Again, they all incentivize more aggressive play. It is great to see, and I think the key takeaways is OPSEC and late game OPSEC. I would recommend you have a troop choice that you hold back for late turns, especially if you go second. If you go first, it's a lot more complicated because your opponent has a little bit of say of what units are going to be remaining on the table and what points you're going to score. But I feel like all this progressive and late game scoring is going to open up the opportunity where your opponent might misjudge what they need to kill to deny you the maximum number of points, because it's pretty hard to keep up with all of these. So I highly recommend you go through all these missions. You make a document like this where you take notes of what you need to do, and you summarize it just so it's a lot easier to see, because it's going to take a minute to get used to these missions, but I'm super excited. So those are all the missions. Please let us know what you think in the comments, and what if you're excited to play these new missions. And if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful at all, again, disclaimer, I have not played any of these missions. This is just me guessing how I'm gonna have to play and how these missions are gonna work out. I'm very excited. Please share with your friends and give us a like, and make sure you subscribe because we have tons of content coming out. Thanks, guys.